Quilters Newsletter TV, the quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Karr-Petras, and with me today is Valerie C. White. Valerie is a mixed media textile artist, and Valerie's here today to show us something I'm really excited about. It's a flower paste silkscreen technique, is that correct?
It is, it is.
Well, I've never seen this done in real life, so let's just jump right into it. I can't wait to see how this works.
I love this technique for creating texture on surface design, on fabric.
Okay.
It's really very easy to do. It begins with 1 cup of flour to about 3/4 cup of water. Not cold, sort of medium. I like room temperature.
Okay.
And mix, mix, mix until you get a pancake consistency.
Okay.
And then you're ready to go. And it's simple because all you need to do, I'm going to show you what I generally do. I left a part of this screen so that you'd be able to see. I put it at the top of the screen on the back side, not in the well, and I just smooth it down. And it may take 2 or 3 passes before you can get it nicely covered.
Okay.
Here's where an option comes in. Once your screen is covered, do you want to work directly into the wet flour, which gives you a smoother line? Let me put that down. A much smoother line. Or do you want to wait for the flour paste to dry and then begin to scratch?
Okay.
Now, for me, I like the texture that happens from the scratched lines. I think it's unique because it's not a clean, smooth line, and it gives just an organic appeal to the work, and I really like that. And having said that, I'm also intrigued with what happens when I put things on top of the screen.
Right. What did you use for this pattern
This was a piece of ribbon that had holes in it, a piece of plastic ribbon, and I just simply made these marks with the other end of a paintbrush.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an easy and it's fun. And what makes it so nice is when you're finished, this is a temporary screen. This is not going to hold up forever. But once you're finished, you put it in a bucket of water, the flour is gone, and you still have your silk screen.
And these are actual silk screens?
These are actual silk screens, actual silk screens. So I've done one to show you exactly what happens when you do with text and with a image. I did a little flower. Everything gets scratched out on the opposite side. And I'm going to just scratch a little bit on my little flower here, just to show you. And I'm using, this is just a skewer. This is nothing fancy. Sometimes I'll take the end with an emery board just so it's not so sharp.
Blunt it a little bit.
Blunt it some because you don't want to make a hole. You don't want to puncture your screen. And if that happens, not that I would know that happens.
Sure, no, this has
right?
never happened
Never happened to me. You can put a little piece of tape there.
Okay.
Okay, and that will hide it. But you see, you don't get an exact line. But it's something quite lovely for me in how I work to get these textural sort of lines.
Do you ever draw something out on paper first and then use that as a template, or is this all just right on?
I do, especially if I'm going to use text. As you can see, you have to do things in the mirror image.
Yeah.
Yes, so that when you're ready to print, it will read correctly.
I see.
So yes, I do. In fact, my recent series of work, this was really a nice line for me to add texture for some roots that I was working on. So this really works nicely. Now, one of the things that may be of interest to folks is that if you do want to make a permanent sort of screen with this, you can always do it on paper, take a photocopy, and maybe later make a thermofax screen, which is a little bit more, that screen is more permanent.
Okay.
There are lots of options if you really like what you're doing. And I've gotten to the point now that sometimes I'll begin with just doing it on paper, so I see what I have. And just if it's lovely, then I may want to hold on to it.
But you said these screens will degrade over time. The more
Will
you
degrade
use them.
the more you use them. If you start off with a whole sheet of fabric, you might notice towards the end a piece or two may flake flick off, and that's okay. I like to use this in a whole cloth quilt, but there are others who like to use it, make a whole big sheet of fabric and then cut it up and use it in piecing, which is effective as well. So it's really an easy, fun way of getting some interesting service design.
Well, I would love to try this someday, so I'm like
well,
I said, I'm the perfect audience for this.
Well, that's great. Shall we take a print?
I would love to.
This is textile paint today. And I begin at the top, and I'm going to make a line of paint.
It's pretty generous.
Yes, I think maybe too much, but it's not too bad today. And I get a squeegee, and I'm going to begin here. Take a nice pass.
How much pressure are you exerting on that?
I'm putting some pressure down on it because I'm trying to push the paint through those little lines.
Okay.
So yeah, I am putting some, and then we lift it up very gently, and let's see what we have.
That is so cool.
This happens to be a poetry from Paul Laurence Dunbar. We Wear the Mask, and I just like it, and I just chose just a part of it. So there we are.
That's great. And then do you have multiple screens sometimes that you overlay?
I do, and that's what I think is most interesting about my own work, is that I'm working on layers and layers and layers. I may first begin with this in a very pale color so that perhaps you can't read it, but you can see that there's some kind of texture, and then I build on top of it. I brought some pieces today that sort of show you.
Yes, we have some over on the design wall, so we can talk about those. And earlier off camera you were saying that you can see a progression in your work.
I can.
Looking at the pieces we're displaying today.
I have those. The first piece that we're looking at was done when I first embraced this technique. But as I got more confident in the screen printing process, I began to think about working on top of layers on top of layers. And I think that's where the interest comes, especially in the Root series, where the last one is one of the most recent ones that I've done, where I made a drawing of those three little leaves and printed them and then went on top again and then on top. And it just added, I think, a lot of texture and interest to the work that you don't necessarily get if you're marking with a straight, hard line. I think there's something very interesting about this jaggedness that happens.
Yes, I would agree. I really do, because I think just watching this, it draws me in to it a little bit more because the lines aren't as distinct, and sometimes when we see text, we just sort of skim through it.
Right.
I can't skim through this quite as easily.
Not
the way
quite.
you've drawn it
Not
out.
quite.
And
not
so
quite.
It makes me focus on the poetry.
And then sometimes, you know, what I'll do is sort of place my screen so that I can take a second run. I may have enough paint on here now. I'm not always interested in making a sign. I like what happens when you look at text as texture rather as text as a sign that you can read. I know what it says, but I think something happens very interesting. Now, if I come back on top of that, let's go all the way across and
So now, as you said, it's not a sign. Now it's
not
a piece
a
of art.
sign. It's a piece of art. So then you start to work back into it. What are some of the interesting things that I can do out at the bottom? You know, I've been on this root kick for so long that everything I do, I'm always leaving space for that to happen. But I really think this is a fun way of getting into creating surface design without having to work real hard about it.
It seems like it. And aside from, these are purchased silk screens, or
These
you
purchased.
Can purchase them?
Yes, I won't give the names because there are lots of places where you can find them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Art supply
I
stores.
buy them, and then of course I'm putting the tape down just to stop the paint from sliding up underneath it.
Okay.
And that's it. And
then
from now, I'll just soak that in some fabric, water rather, and that will come right off, and it's ready to do something else again.
So aside, again, from getting the silk screens and the special paint, it seems like it's really something a lot of us could do at home.
Oh, absolutely.
With very little training.
Very little training. And you don't
fantastic.
have to use textile paint.
Okay.
You can also use Think and Dye, which I happen to like a lot. Or you can use a discharge, a jacquard discharge base. And that works well as removing color with not just adding it.
This is fantastic. Like, you know, it seems so simple, and yet it really opens up an entire world.
It does. It does.
Possibilities for us. A lot of quilters do look into textile design after they love to buy the patterns and see all the new fabric that's out in the quilt shops. But there comes a point, it seems, with a lot of quilters where it's like, I really want to be free from other people's designs and explore more.
Absolutely.
And it's a great place to start.
We did our sample today on white fabric. But there's nothing preventing you from doing it on something that's colored or has some small print. How interesting that is then. So there are lots of options for this flower paste resist. It's really a fun, easy way of adding texture.
This is fantastic. And I just might have to put on your apron and give it a try myself
I'd
after
love
we
that.
cut the cameras.
I'd love that.
Well, thank you so much for coming today and showing this to us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Loved
Thanks for
it.
having me.
Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Quilters Newsletter TV, the quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters.